Hi, today we are going to talk about bond valuation. So what is a bond? A bond is simply an instrument, it's a contract between a bond issuer and the bondholder, whereby the issuer agrees to pay the bondholder a fixed amount of money at equal intervals, and at the end of the whole maturity, pay back to the bondholder the par value. Let me illustrate with an example. So assume that there's a 3-year bond whereby the issuer agrees to pay back the bondholder the par value equivalent to $100, and at every semi-annual period agrees to pay the bondholder, say, 5% interest. Okay, so in effect, this is a t equal 1, t equal 2, t equal 3. Okay, in effect, this is a 10% coupon bond, maturity of 3 years. And so on. So these are all 5% every semi-annual. And let me write coupon as C is equal to 10%. Okay. Payment term is semi-annual. The tenor is 3 years. Okay, so the challenge now is to value the bond, the price of the bond today. And how do we do it? As we can see, there's actually 2 elements to valuation. The first one is the coupon that we'll be receiving every semi-annually. So it's $5 here, $5 here, and so on, and $5 here. And the next element that we need to value is the par amount that we'll be receiving at the end of the maturity of the bond. So once we manage to value these two amounts as at the current day, as at t equals 0, and add them together, basically we have arrived at the value of the bond. Okay, let me write the relationship in formula form. So the value of the bond today is equal to 5%. Discount it, I'm taking this 5%, discount it to t equals 0, which is 1 plus R1. So I'm assuming R1 is the interest rate in the first period. Let me give them some names: R2, R3, R4, R5, R6. Okay, so I'm discounting this coupon back to the t equals 0. Let me do the second one, 5%. Okay, remember that R is expressed as in annual terms. Oh, sorry, so I should divide by 2 here, if R is expressed as annual terms. So for R2, I should do 1 plus R2 divided by 2 to get the coupon for semi-annual period, and then discount it back 2 periods to t equals 0. Okay, and I'll do so for the rest. 5% plus 1 plus R3 over 2 to the power of cube. Okay, plus, and so on. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 of this. And the last one being 5% over 1 plus R6 over 2 to the power of 6. Okay, plus finally the par value that we need to discount back. Okay, so it's $100 over 1 plus R6 to the power divided by 2 to the power of 6. Alright, so this is the formula that for this particular bond. And notice that all the R are different. Okay, so we can write it generically. Okay, so this is summation to the nth term, start from 1. Okay, so C is the coupon rate, divide by 1 plus R to the power of I, divide by 2, because this is so happen that this is a semi-annual payment. Okay, maybe I should divide by 2 for the coupon to make it even clearer, because C is 10%, so divide by 2 is the 5%. Okay, so this one to the power of I. So this expression actually sums up all these coupon payments, plus 100 over 1 plus R6 over 2 to the power of 6. Okay, so this is the expression for calculating the value of the bond today. Okay, let's look at this R in particular. All this R, R1, R2, R3. And let's make one assumption. All the R's are the same. Okay. Okay, all the coupons, all the interest rates are the same. So this will greatly simplify the whole formula. Because when we look at this, and if all the R's are the same, okay, so assume that all the R's are the same. You can see that all the coupon calculation is simply a geometric series, because the factor that we put into each of these terms are the same. So this simply we can use the present value of annuity formula, which is given by FB equal to coupon. In this case, let's write it as coupon over 2 because it's a semi-annual payment, multiplied by 1 minus 1 plus R, okay, over 2, because it's a semi-annual coupon payment to the power of n, divide by R over 2. Okay, so we can use the geometric progression formula in lieu of this expression. Okay, so okay, let me write another example where instead of having the coupon being paid, say semi-annually, let's imagine that the next coupon happens in 1 month's time. Okay, so t equals 0. We have the next coupon, t is equal to 1 month, which is 1 over 12 years. Okay, so and then the following one will be in the 7th month. Okay, which is actually half a year here. Okay, and so on. So we have another 0.5 months here. So it's 7 over 12 plus. So it's 13 over 12. Okay, and so on. So how do we value such bond? It's actually very simple. We can value the bond as at this period using the notation that we spoke about earlier. Using the geometric progression formula that we spoke about earlier, but the only difference is in previously period is n is equal to 6, but now we do n is equal to 5 because there's only 5 periods as at t is equal to 1 over 12 in 1 month's time. So we get the v here, and then finally we do a PV of this v here. So the value as at current time is equal to PV of V1. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. This is a bit more work involved, but the idea is very straightforward. Alright, so let's try to imagine, back to the formula just now. Let's try to imagine a scenario where all the R's are equal, and let's find the relationship between the R and the price of the bond. So we want to find a relationship between this one and R. Okay, so we can see that because R is in the denominator of this whole all the expression, R is always at the denominator. So we can imagine that when R increase, if we happen to plot the graph between R and P, which is the value of the bond, you can see that when R increase, price will always decrease, and when R decrease, price will always increase. So people will call this a inverse relationship between U and price. R is normally known to the traders as the U. So R is equal to U. And in fact, most traders don't quote prices, they quote U, because simply because two different bonds with two different coupons, different maturity, are really hard to compare against each other. And so let me give you an example. Let's say a bond, 10-year bond to maturity, paying say 8% in coupon, and compared to another 8-year bond to maturity, paying say 5% coupon. How do we compare these two bonds? If we price them, it's difficult. One bond can maybe price at say $90, and the other bond can be priced at $110. Is $110 more expensive than $90? So no, because of the different maturity and different coupons of these two bonds. So the price may be different. So the solution is to quote these two bonds in U, okay, and so that they become comparable. Okay, so of course, in real world, R is not the same, because we have what we call the term structure of interest rate. When we draw an interest rate curve, I think everybody should know that interest rate typically increases as the time to maturity increase. Let's say this is the interest rate. This is the time, and this is the interest rate. As I think most people acknowledge that the longer the time that you lend someone money, the higher the rate that you expect from the person. So normally the interest rate curve is something like that. And when you draw something like that, it's clear that the interest rate is not the same across time. Okay, so it is basically upward sloping. So there are of course certain scenario where there's a downward sloping curve, but these are very far and few between, so we shall not talk about this. So when there's an upward sloping curve, you can see that when you value the bond, all this shouldn't be the same. Right, so it's back to where we started off. All this shouldn't be the same. And what we should be using is to be using the R1. We should be using the interest rate as an R1 from the interest rate curve. We should be using R1 here. This is t equal to 1. Okay, so we should be using R1 here, RT, and so on and so forth. T equal to, we should be using the R2 here in the discount formula. Okay, as the discount formula, and so on and so forth, all the way to t equals 6. And we use R6 in the discount formula here. Okay. The exact way of spotting this curve is actually a bit more involved, and it deserves another lecture. This is what we call the bootstrap curve, or some people call it the spot curve, spot rate curve. And this is a very important aspect in bond valuation, because as you can imagine, the exact points here will really drive the valuation of every bond. Okay, I will cover this in the next lecture. But before I end this, I just want to add another point where relating to the spot rate curve. Okay, I think we should at this point in time distinguish between the treasury bond versus a corporate bond. What are treasury bonds? These are in fact bonds that are issued by governments denominated in the local currency. So let's take the USA for example. So US government will issue bonds denominated in US dollar. Okay, of course the US government can issue bonds denominated in other currencies, in euros for example, or pounds. But let's not talk about that, because those carry other forms of risk. Let's focus our attention on the governments issuing in their own currencies. Okay, so we call this the treasury bonds. They'll be issued in different maturities, and we can plot such interest rates of such bonds into what we call the spot rate curve, as mentioned just now. And we can call this a risk-free spot rate curve. Okay, and this is the basis of all interest rate risk. When you do valuation of government bonds, we'll be using the spot rate curve to value them. Let's now look at corporate issues bonds. Yeah, so as I think intuitively we know that corporates do default. Business may not be that good. Somebody did a wrong investment, revenue falls and so on, and then the company becomes bankrupt. So there's a certain form of default risk that is not really present in the treasury bonds. Governments don't really, the expectation that of a government is that government don't really become bankrupt, because they have the power to print money. They can simply print their way out of problems. Okay, so of course, I think in the past crisis that happened, this assumption may not really be true, but let's assume that governments don't default and governments are risk-free. Okay, so when we compare the corporate issue bonds versus treasury bonds, there has to be certain element of riskiness to corporate issue bonds. So when we draw a yield curve for a corporate bond, it can be expected that the yields of corporates are higher than the yields of treasuries. Okay, and this is what we call the credit spread. Credit spread. Okay, so this is what we call a credit spread. At any point in time, there's a spread in between the spot rate curve and the corporate yield curve, which is called the treasury spread. Typically, the curve, the spread will increase over time, because we will expect a loan to be even riskier over the longer term as compared to the nearer term. Let's say, as an extreme example, a bond is from a corporate is due tomorrow. It's almost certain that we'll be redeeming the bond tomorrow. Okay, and compared to another bond that will be matures in say 10 years time, there's much more uncertainty over the course of 10 years, and we will certainly demand a higher credit spread over the 10 years. Okay, so at this point in time, just distinguish between the spot rate curve plotted from treasury issues versus the yield curve plotted from corporate issues, and the difference between them is called the credit spread. And our next lecture will talk about how do we plot the spot rate curve issued by treasuries. Okay, that's all for now. Thank you.